Today marks the 30th anniversary of my first arrival in the then People's Republic of Poland on the 4th of June 1982. That was a remarkable day for me. I arrived at one of the saddest and most difficult periods of Polish history, under martial law and even a curfew. When I stepped off the plane at Akenci airport, there were two soldiers with Kalashnikovs at the bottom of the steps, and a tank was clearly visible in the background. For me, as a young diplomat who had never been behind the Iron Curtain before, this was a completely new experience. Living and working in Poland in that era was not easy. My primary responsibility was for contacts with the largely banned opposition, and that meant that I had a lot of new best friends from the secret police. It was for me, however, also a very rewarding time, a time when I learnt to understand what freedom and the lack of it really meant, a time when I met some extraordinary Poles who risked their freedom and frequently ended up in jail in order to fight for a free and democratic Poland. But it was also a time, being honest, when many people had lost hope of a brighter future. I would like to say that when I left Poland in 1985, I knew that only 4 years later it would become a free and democratic country, but that would not be true. I have many incredible memories of that era, but perhaps the one that's imprinted most on my mind is being one of only two diplomats, the other was a colleague, who sneaked through the tight security police cordon in order to be with Pope John Paul in Nowa Huta near Krakow during his second visit to Poland as Pope in 1983. Also, I had many experiences of seeing at first hand the brutal methods of the police and the ZOMO in putting down demonstrations by solidarity activists, particularly in 1982 and 1983. I too have smelt and felt the effects of tear gas. I left Poland at the end of in the middle of 1985, and returned almost 13 years later as deputy head of mission. Although I knew intellectually how big and how successful the changes had been in the intervening years, I was still shocked by the transformation when I arrived in Krakow in June 1998 and saw a vibrant market square full of tourists, pubs, and people really enjoying life. That was such a tremendous transformation from the rather sad and quiet Krakow I remembered from the mid-1980s. My second time in Poland was also exceptionally rewarding. I was here to celebrate Poland's entry into NATO, its guarantee of a secure future, and I was proud to work with Know-How Fund colleagues and others to support Poland's future entry into the European Union. I also had the special privilege of being engaged in helping the new local government arrangements in Poland, which enabled me to visit each of the 16 new counties and really get to know the whole of Poland. That was both professionally useful but also personally a great pleasure for me. Sadly, I had to leave Poland before it joined the European Union, but being back in the UK at that time, I saw at first hand the benefits of EU free movement of workers, as I heard more and more Polish in my daily life in the UK, and was particularly delighted when Polish specialities started appearing in my local supermarket, even though this was not necessarily good for my waistline. But the fulfillment of my dream came last year when on the 4th of July I returned to Warsaw for the third time as ambassador. This had been something of an ambition for me since my first days in the diplomatic service, but I had never really dared to dream that that would become a reality. And what better time to come back than a time when Poland had just assumed for the first time the presidency of the European Union. That was a really busy time with lots of UK ministers and other VIPs visiting some of the best bits of Poland, like Gdansk, Sopot, Warsaw, Wrocław and Krakow, but also a time when we were really able to underline the strong relationship that exists between the UK and Poland. Returning here has also given me immense satisfaction as I see the continuing progress that Poland has made in terms of developing its economy, developing its infrastructure, and improving the well-being of its people. It's also been great to renew some really old acquaintances who remember the dark days back in 1982 and are so proud of what they have achieved in the intervening period. For me, my job here is to represent British interests, and I'm passionate about that, and I think there is a wonderful synergy that my 30 years coincides so directly with Her Majesty the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. But I also admit to a very soft spot for Poland and for Poles. I, for one, feel like at home. Thank you very much.